Hey, if you're an older sibling, you understand when this happens, but you know when you're just going about your own business and your younger sibling comes up to you and says something and they don't mean it to be profound, but when they say it, you start thinking about it and it what they said is actually really smart and really deep, but you can't say anything or else they'll start treating you like they're better than you, so you pretend what they said was really dumb. Yeah, I'm guilty of doing that. Hey, Spartans for Christ, what is up? Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, hi, welcome. Consider subscribing. This is just a channel where us teens are seeking after Jesus with everything we've got and having a little bit of fun while we're at it. We're having that fun over at the Sib. So if you're subscribed, if you're not subscribed, but if you are subscribed and you're not subscribed to the Sib yet, go check it out. Hit that subscribe button and that bell notifications so that we can have some fun. It's real lit down there. If you guys are subscribed to the Sib and you watched my 9 things to do if you're bored video, then you know that I have been reading through the Minor Prophets, which it took me many a time to convince myself to read. Because, I thought it was just this judgment and fire and all this stuff. I mean, Jeremiah is my favorite book of the Bible, but I looked at the Minor Prophets and I was like, nah, fam, I can't. But I've been reading it, as I said I would, and it's actually pretty good. So far, I've gotten to Amos. Amos is 9 chapters. And it was a pretty good book, but at one point I kind of got discouraged and I went back to the New Testament, back to Acts, which was a book I was reading before, because I was like, God, Amos is kind of boring. But then I felt like God was saying, like, no, I want you to read Amos. And so I was like, fine. So I went back to Amos and I was reading chapter 7 and it was like God spoke to me. And I was like, well, thank God I was reading this. And that is what I'm going to share with you guys today. Now, if you already know by the thumbnail and by the title of this video what this is kind of about. The thumbnail, if I'm doing what's in my head, has something about to do. Who cares about your title? You're probably like, that's a little aggressive. This is to encourage you, okay? So don't worry. I was reading through Amos 7 and it gets to this part where the priest comes up to Amos, and you can go there and you can read it if you want. It's a pretty good book, actually. And the priest comes up to Amos and he says, hey, you, I know you're a prophet, so just stop prophesying. He says it. It's like, hey, I know you're a president, stop passing laws. So he comes up to Amos, hey, I know you're a prophet, stop prophesying, because you're saying all these bad things. The beginning of Amos is very down and like, oh, there will be no remnant left, and there will be fire and locusts will eat, and it's craziness. And the priest is saying, like, hey, you're a prophet, I know you're a prophet, don't tell me you're not a prophet, stop prophesying and we'll be on good terms, stop prophesying and I won't be mad at you, nothing bad will come of you. And this is the next verse is where God kind of spoke to me. And Amos replies, I am not a prophet. I am not even the son of a prophet. Another translation says, I was not trained up as a prophet. So he says, I am not a prophet. I am not even the son of a prophet. I have no right to the title prophet. Amos here is basically saying, I am in no way a prophet. I am in no way is that my title. I am in no way qualified for this position. And then he goes, look, I was a shepherd. I was a sheep herder. I grew things. There's NLT says he was a shepherd, and then New King James Version says he grew plants, along with tending sheep. So, he's saying, I can't have that title. That's not my title. I know you're saying that I'm a prophet, but I'm not. I do not have the qualifications for this title. But then he says, what does he say? He says, I'm not a prophet. I'm just a shepherd. I just grow things. But the Lord called me out of the flock and told me to prophesy. And basically he's saying, he told me to prophesy and I did. And then he goes and he prophesies against the priest that was speaking to him. But this is what, right now I think you're getting what I'm getting at. I think you're getting what I'm putting down. God doesn't care about your title. He doesn't care about your qualifications. So I'm a prayer leader at our youth group, and I don't say that to brag. I say that to paint you a picture that I'm sure you can relate to this. So as a prayer leader, me and my co-leader are pretty comfortable praying in front of people. I'm not necessarily like, oh, I want to go and pray in front of people, but if we're asked, we're fine with it. And because we're comfortable, we are given the task as prayer leaders to encourage other youth group members to pray. Like one of my closest friends in youth group actually is very shy. She's very sweet, but she's very shy. And recently I was like, hey, are you comfortable with praying today? And she goes, no, I'm not. And she said something along the lines of, I don't know the right words to say. And I feel like we have so many, and there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Like, I've been scared of praying before. And when she prays, it's amazing. But I'm just using that example to say we all have excuses. I'm not qualified. I don't know the right words. But in that moment, when I read that, when Amos says, I am not a prophet, basically he's saying, I'm not a prophet. I don't even have the qualifications to be a prophet. Look at my life. Look at my job. You would never even think I would ever become a prophet. But God called me to prophesy. And I'm here to tell you today, God is calling you to prophesy. God is calling you to seek his face. God is calling you to worship him. It doesn't matter if you have an angelic voice or if you're just making a joyful noise. God is calling you to worship him. God is calling you to be an example to those around you. He's not asking you to be perfect. Don't say I can't be a light because I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. God is calling you to speak out for his name. What message has he put on your heart? Stop giving him excuses. Be like Amos. Let that be your testimony. Look, I'm not a preacher. Look, I'm not a worship leader. Look, I'm not a pastor. I'm not a perfect human, but God called me to worship. God called me to speak. God called me to be a light, and I followed. I didn't ask about qualifications. I didn't give him all the reasons why. We've already talked about reasons why hindering you. And I'm just here to remind you that God doesn't care about your title. Okay? He doesn't care how not unqualified you are, but God uses the humble. So please, for you people walking around all proud, oh yeah, I'm the youth leader. The youth pastor chose me. Stop it. Stop it. Look at the position here. You have a shepherd talking to a priest. Anyone else looking at this situation would be like, he's qualified to speak to God. This lowly man, he's a shepherd. He's not qualified for God to use him. Guess who God used? Amos. Why? Because Amos didn't care about the qualifications or his title. He just said, God, you spoke. You want me to speak? Okay, I'll do it. Don't beat yourself down, but also don't become entitled. The attitude God wants is one of humility and obedience. Nothing more, nothing less. What is God calling you to do? Is he calling you to take a step into an unknown area? Is God calling you to speak out? Speak out. Step away from the flock and prophesy. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know that there was one very similar to this about a couple months ago. Go check that one out if you haven't seen it. But it was just a message that God really entitled in my heart and really impressed upon me. So I thought I would make a video about it. So yeah, if you're not subscribed, subscribe down below. Leave a thumbs up. Subscribe to the Sib if you're not subscribed yet. Here is my last video from the Sib. Go check it out. And here's a video YouTube thinks you'll like. Peace out.